Hi, everybody. Fancy meeting you here, huh? So, how was your Thanksgiving? Mine was great. I hope that everybody else's is good too. We had a good time. It was one thing. Remember that I said that we bought all the food for our feast yesterday? Well, I don't want to do that anymore. It wasn't bad, but it was like, okay, I cook like a big ham and a big turkey and all that when I do it. And this was one of those, like, the ham and the turkey that's like a loaf, you know, and you can slice it and you can bake it and everything. And I mean, it's real ham and everything, but it's kind of just like pressed into this loaf. And that's what this was. And so we're not going to do that anymore. Now, I will say, potatoes and gravy were good. Stuffing, dressing, whatever you want to call it, was, it was okay. Um, the cabbage rolls were delicious. The rolls were delicious. And my daughter, of course, made me my broccoli cheese rice casserole, which I loved. And my other daughter made green beans with bacon and everything in them, and I loved. So I pretty much sat there and gorged on broccoli rice casserole. I've got a hair on my face. And green beans. So anyway, and that's the leftovers I'm gonna have tonight. I might eat a little piece of ham. The ham was not bad. It wasn't Thanksgiving. So would it be crazy, y'all, if I went and bought a ham and turkey and cooked them? I mean, I just missed it. Like, not the same day, but like maybe one day make a turkey, and kind of eat on that for a while, eat some turkey sandwiches, that kind of thing. And then, 4 or 5 days later, make a ham. So that's what I might do. So I don't want to wait till Christmas. And we usually do Mexican food for Christmas. So that's just us. There's my. So anyway, I have been painting cards, y'all, because of the card exchange that I'm wanting to do. So if you have not yet, please use my email address. There's one that's going across the screen at the bottom, or the other one is listed on my community page in a post that I put there. Um, Send me your address and I will send you a card and you can send me a card. And I know that the ones in Canada, bless their hearts, I guess, is their mail strike still going? Because if so, I know they won't be able to probably do it. But anyway, the rest of us, we could, and I don't really care where you live. I'll send you a card no matter where you live. So anyway, it might cost a little bit and be slow, but I'll send you one. No, Constance, I won't overdo it. Like I said, one day I'll put one in and cook it, and a few days later I'll do the other. And just, share with my family because we're all just kind of like, we didn't get our turkey. We didn't get our ham. Me and dad are the ham eaters, and the rest of them are all turkey, 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 turkey. And me and dad are like, this is not it. So dad yesterday was like, I need to apologize to you all because this was completely my idea. What I should have done, there's another place that I know, it's a grocery store. Actually, it's our local grocery store, and they do Thanksgiving dinner too. But theirs is like a turkey and a ham, and you don't just get the loaf. So if we decide to do it again, hopefully not. Hopefully everybody's healthy and we can do that. But anyway, so yeah, I got my flannel shirt on today. I told my dad yesterday, I said, how come all the girls that I see when they wear a flannel shirt, they look so cute and, warm and cozy and, it just looks like fall. And when I put one on, I look like a lumberjack. So, oh, Marilee, the mail strike is still going. My goodness. I need to read up on that. I don't know what's really going on. Joel, I'll just send you a Christmas card anyway. You don't have to send me one. I might make you one special for you if I could figure out something. that would be absolutely just for Joel. And I understand the whole deal about the sister passing and I understand completely. Um, I had a hard time with Thanksgiving for many, many years after my sister passed because that was her day. She absolutely loved Thanksgiving. She started thinking about it in June. I'm not kidding. And I told her one time, I said, "Do you ever not think about Thanksgiving when we're sitting down to Christmas? Are you thinking about what we might do next Thanksgiving?" So, anyway, I'm going to say hi to my chat and then we're going to get started. Today shouldn't be a real long one, but I just was doing some research and I thought, well, I'm going to go ahead and do this one. I'm saving some that I've got scheduled or not scheduled that I've got researched and my notes written up for when I feel a little bit better because they're longer. They're like an hour, hour and a half. And so I'm trying to stay 30 minutes to an hour so I don't get in trouble. Now, I don't think that Mischief Manage is going to be in the chat today. She might. You never know when she's going to pop up. She was watching the other day with all the ones and she was really said that it helped her get through a couple of really rough days. But today she's exhausted. You know how that is. It can just be exhausting. Grief is tiring, y'all. It is exhausting. And so I told her that I too can be the sassy, bossy sister. And for her to get her butt, I didn't say get her butt, but I told her to go to bed. I said, go get some rest. Go to bed. So she wrote back and she goes, okay, bossy, I'm in bed or I'm going to bed or something. But anyway, so I'm hoping that she's resting and she'll be back tomorrow, the next day, I'm sure. So anyway, I want to say hi to my chat. Marilee, thank you for being here. I am always thrilled to see you. Constance June, good to see you. Thank you so much for being a member. Joel McCoy, of course, thank you so much for being here. And thank you for being a member. DJ Nico, good to see you. I'm painting those cards, DJ. Goodness. Everybody just kind of talking to each other. Oh, I have a very hard time at the holidays. This is Joel speaking. My sister loved them. She died in November of 68. My daughter was born on December Day, passed on St. Patty's Day. My brother passed on my birthday in March. Bless your heart. Hi, Evie, before I forget to mention you. Oh, Joel, I'm so sorry. My uncle Donnie passed the day before Thanksgiving and years ago. I can't remember the year. I'm terrible with years. And his birthday was the day before Christmas Eve, which I call Christmas Eve Eve. And it's my favorite day because Christmas Eve Eve, I've usually got everything done and I sit my ass down. Because Christmas Eve, we go to Mark's parents or his mom's. His dad has passed away, but we go to his mom's house. Hi, Marilyn. Good to see you. I've missed you. I feel like it's been forever since we talked. But and then Christmas we're here with my family. So Christmas Eve Eve is my favorite day, but it's always kind of sad because of my uncle passing away. He was like one of my two or three very favorite uncles. So probably my number one for many, many, many years. So anyway, if y'all want to put in the chat how your Thanksgiving went, feel free to do that. We're going to talk a little bit today on the difference of religion versus cult and the thin line that separates the two. And to be perfectly honest, it doesn't, my whole thing that I'm going to talk about doesn't really resolve it. Hey, Susie, good to see you. Feels weird to say, hey, Susie, but, but it's good to see you. Glad you're here. I hope I'm not missing anybody, but oh gosh. But anyway, so this chat, it's not very long, or this conversation we're going to have, it's not very long. It really doesn't settle the question of, is there a thin line? I think it does show that there's a thin line, but it doesn't really define how to differentiate between a church or a religion and a cult, which it does in a way. You'll see what I mean, because there are things that religions do that cults also do, and vice versa. But there's some things that cults do that religions don't do. So hopefully that will kind of set it apart. And Marilyn would be more of she would probably be like a crazy good person to talk about this because she was in a church that was a cult. And so, and not Scientology. So today we're not really talking about Scientology. It is mentioned because the historians mentioned it. So it is mentioned, but it's not the whole topic of conversation. It's kind of generalized, if that makes any sense. So anyway, I'm going to get started because apparently I'm in a chatty mood. I get that way when Mischief is not here to point her finger at me. So anyway, I'm going to get started. And yes, I am still writing it down because my brain's still not working. So anyway, the majority of us on this channel are either parents or grandparents or even great grandparents, right? And most of us probably don't add joining a cult to the things that we're the most worried about when it comes to our children or grandchildren, because most of us are just not around it as much, but some of us are, okay? And so this is for the ones that are and for the ones that aren't, because you might not be today, but you might be tomorrow. And that's kind of something that I'm having to kind of worry about a little bit. So anyway, but how would you feel if you found out that your next door neighbor was in a cult? Would that be weird to you? What if your son or daughter or whoever, a neighbor or whatever, came to you and said they had joined a group of like-minded people? Because that's a lot of what cults say they are. They don't say they're a cult. And a lot of them don't even say they're a religion. They say we're a group of like-minded people, which is kind of weird because on SPTV, sometimes we say that too. So saying that doesn't mean you're a cult, but it is one thing that they do say. So anyway, a 2004 study of 2,400 Nebraskans that were just randomly selected, y'all. It wasn't like any certain group or a church group or, anything. They were just randomly selected, probably one of those phone call things that we get all the time. And they were asked how comfortable they'd feel if their neighbor joined a cult or a new Christian church. So, two questions. How would you feel if your neighbor joined a cult? How would you feel if your neighbor joined a new Christian religion, a new Christian church in town? Okay. A whopping 80% said that they would not be comfortable if their neighbor was what they called a cultist. If they, found out that their neighbor joined a cult or was in a cult or, whatever. But only, where did I write that down? 6.1% said they'd be uncomfortable if their neighbor joined a new Christian church in town. And I understand that kind of, because it seems like that new churches are popping up all the time and all these non-denominational churches. And I'm not bad mouthing any of them. They're probably mostly wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people and organizations. But I've known a couple in my life, one heavily in particular, that I really was concerned about. I mean, they met in somebody's house. They had never I had never even I dated one of them, and I had never heard of them going to church at all. I had never um heard them have any kind of faith. And that doesn't mean that they weren't. It could just mean that they were quiet, but I dated one, and religion was just not something that they were ever comfortable talking about. They didn't go to weddings in a church. They didn't go to funerals in a church. So they went from that to suddenly they were all in having this Bible worship and everything, and they were doing it one night a week, and then pretty soon it's like 4 nights a week. And they started where they thought that they could heal you. They laying their hands on you, they thought that they could heal you. And again, I don't know. I don't know. Only they and God know if they were full of shit or if they were legit, right? So, hey, that kind of rhymed. But anyway, it made me very uncomfortable. And so I would not be in the I would be in the 6.1% that would be worried about it if my neighbor joined a new religious church, but at this or Christian church. But I don't know. I would be probably almost as worried about that as if I knew they joined a cult, just because of things that I've seen. And I could be proven wrong, and I would, go with that, but I could be proven wrong. Anyway, but this study lent proof to what Scientologists argue. The word cult is associated as bad. It is used to slander a belief system or a strange or secretive group. Well, yeah, because that's two of the cult, being strange and being secretive are two of the like big time, like, boom, you need to watch out for cults here. They're red flags. So anyway, historian Gordon, I thought it said Garden. I was going to go, Garden is a funny name. Gordon Melton argued that what we call a cult is only a cult if we don't like it or believe it to be beyond what we consider a proper religion. And I don't know that that's necessarily true. I really don't. I know some people throw the cult word around pretty easily, obviously. And it's meant to be slanderous, to be hateful at times, even, especially to a group that's not a cult, but you're calling them a cult because it's offensive. And Lord knows we know about that, right? So, but I don't know that I would only consider it a cult if I didn't like it. I wouldn't like it because it was a cult, is how I see it. But is there a difference there? I don't know. Hey, Doug, good to see you. Oh, I'm sorry that you're sick. Much love to you and all of yours too. Thank you for being here. Even if you're sick, just lay there and listen or sit there and listen. Just relax. So anyway, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that, but I'm not a historian. So anyway, it can be difficult to separate what is a cult and what is a proper / legitimate religion. Both demand commitment. True. Maybe not demand, but you need to be committed to it. What's all those altar calls if not a demand to be committed, And so anyway, they both involve some sort of leader. The ultimate leader, supposedly, in most cases, and I'm mainly going to talk about my Christian beliefs because that's what I am, and I don't know all these other religions. I would be I wouldn't want to like misspeak and like say something and people be like, that's not what we, but so in the Christian religion, the ultimate leader is Jesus / God and the Holy Spirit, who are supposedly all one person somehow. But there's also preachers, deacons, Sunday school teachers. There's a lot of people that lead a church, the music director, the youth minister. There's all these people that also are in leadership positions of the church. And that's where we can get in trouble because these people are people. They're human. And so, I don't have to go into it. We all know that some humans are pretty sick and do some pretty sick stuff. And so that's where I think that even a legitimate church, such let's just say Baptist, because that's what I was raised. I think that a legitimate Baptist church could be called culty. Look at the one in what is it, Missouri, that goes around and, you know, protests at all the funerals and stuff. They're technically a legitimate church, technically. They're also a damn cult. I take that back. They might not be a cult, but they're shitty people. It just proves that shitty people can be in religions and in churches too. And that's what I'm just saying is we got to kind of watch. So anyway, however, there are differences if you look closely at the two. Let's look at these two and ask ourselves what we consider legitimate religions. And are they just former cults? Were they, odd and unheard of and kind of, people might have thought they were kind of weird back in the day. And over many, many years, they say it takes like 100 years before before you're actually declared like a real religion. But, then there's also Scientology, who was declared a church. And so anyway, that kind of shot that one out from under us. And are these churches, and I'm talking about Baptist, Methodist, Lutheran, Catholic, Church of God, Church of Christ, Mormons, all these, are they cults? Do they have culty behavior? Almost every church around is going to have some culty behavior. But are they cults? Our little group in SPTV probably has some culty behaviors if we look into it. But we don't fit into the description, what clarifies a cult. For one thing, we don't have a leader. We sure don't have a charismatic leader. Unless it's, Farrell Cheryl. I would follow her pretty much anywhere. Or Marilyn. I'd follow them. But anyway, my daughter's messaged me. She lost her keys like a week ago, and she tore her house apart. She's just moved into her house. She's very like minimalistic. She doesn't have a whole lot of stuff, but I mean, she literally tore her house apart, picked her couch up, the whole bit, searching for these keys, and she found them today. Aw. And she got Mookie over there all by herself. Mookie is what are they? Oh, my stomach's itching. I gotta scratch it. I'm sorry. Ugh, kind of right below my chest. Anyway, Moki is an axolotl. And so it's her oldest daughter's pet. So she got Moki over too. So anyway, you know how I am. I'm just like Reese. I get off on some kind of other conversation sometimes, don't I? So anyway, to be a cult, there are things that are absolutely almost 100%, probably 99.9999999% true about cults. Not so much churches, but we're going to look into these real quick. There's just a few. There's not very many. I'm not going to go over like the whole list because there's a lot, but I'm going to go over the main ones. So they almost always have a charismatic leader or founder. The Manson family had Charles Manson. The People's Temple had Jim Jones. I wouldn't have followed either one of those wackadoodles. But they had very different personas. So it's kind of not a one cult fits all situation. There's cults for everybody. It's not just religion. It could be political. It could be just, knitters. It could be, you're following a singing group. I mean, it can be anybody. It's not a one size fits all thing to be a cult. But anyway, though they, were both very charismatic, they had very different personas. They went about things completely different. But they were actually cut of the same wackadoodle cloth. They were both able to gather supporters and sustain their cults through the hard early years. And that's not easy if you think about it. It really it takes a lot in those early years to get everybody gathered up and to make them believe in you enough to stay. And not only stay, but then to go get others to come in there too. So a charismatic leader or founder is very important to a cult. But if we think about it, see, this is where we're going to go kind of with this live, is kind of both sides of the coin kind of thing. But if we think about it, Jesus was also a charismatic leader, and he collected disciples, and he drew crowds of listeners. So could that be considered culty? Yeah. We'll go on in a little bit and we'll tell you the difference. John Calvin of Calvinism, John Wesley of Methodism, and George Fox of the Quakers were all charismatic and persuasive leaders. The Buddha, Muhammad, and King David were all also documented as charismatic. Oh, I had my thumb over a word. I'm so sorry, guys. The sociologist Max Weber even argued that charisma was an essential requirement for authority and legitimacy. So basically, he's saying that if you're not charismatic, you're not going to be able to execute authority over people. I mean, even a German guy was very charismatic. I know a lady, I think she might have passed away now, but she was old anyway. But I know a lady who personally knew him when she was a little girl. Like she fell down and scraped her knee, and he like came over and picked her up and helped her clean it off, and pet her on the head and told her how great she was. And she had several other run-ins with him through her life. And so they weren't like besties, but she knew him. Like he knew her on sight. He would be like, hey, I know you, wave to her or something when he went by. I don't know. But anyway, she would argue that none of that was true, that, he was a good person, that anything that was done that was bad was done for the right reasons. And I mean, bizarre, absolutely denial and bizarre. But he was charismatic. I don't think that, I don't know, maybe Miscavige is charismatic to some people. I mean, he's got a nice kind of wacky, crazy looking smile, and he's got pretty eyes and stuff, but I don't think he's attractive. I don't think he's charismatic. Maybe it's because I know he's an evil monster. They say LRH was charismatic, but I don't get it either. I mean, honestly, with Scientology, I don't get it. I guess one person's charismatic is not the same as everybody's. But today, y'all, in today's world, charisma in a religion, like a legitimate religion, is not really important. It's not an important thing to have in a church leader. They don't have to necessarily be charismatic, but in a cult they do. Because, like, for instance, y'all know I can't be the only one who has sat through many long, droning on and on sermons from a leader that, a preacher that you were just like, shut up. One time, one of our deacons, and I love this pastor, but he was going on about kind of a boring subject that day. It wasn't very good, and he just wasn't on his A game. And one of the deacons was sitting like 2 or 3 seats ahead of me, and he literally like raises his arm up and at the preacher. Like, get it over with. So, it's not that important in the religious, like legitimate religions, but in a cult, it is. Because in a cult, in a religion, We can get up off that pew and we can leave. We can tap our watch. We can go to the pastor later and say, that one was just, I wasn't getting that one. Or we can say, preacher, that one, you were talking to me. You were talking directly to me. We can do all these things. You can't do that in a cult. You can't get up and leave. You can't tap your watch. You can't tell them when they're right or when they're, well, you can tell them when they're right. They're always right, but you can't tell them when they're wrong. You can't tell them when they were kind of off their game. You can't tell them like anything except for praising, 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 And so that's the difference. Oh, y'all, I got to turn my, there we go. That's the difference in a cult and a religion as far as charismatic leaders, because cult leaders absolutely have to have that charismatic, charming kind of persona. And good Lord, as many people as LRH supposedly slept with, I guess he was charismatic to some people. I don't know. Now, years ago, he wasn't ugly. I don't know what happened. I don't know if, ugly is as ugly does kind of thing. And he just got ugly because he got ugly, But he really did not age well, because he was all right looking in the pictures that I've seen when he was young. I might would have thought he was more charismatic back then. I don't know. Anyway, a tradition of secrecy. Now, here's a good one that I did not know about, y'all. The cult of Mithras, and I'm probably saying it wrong, Mithras, was a rival to the early Christianity. Never heard of them? Most people haven't. And I'll tell you why. Because they followed the second rule of a cult after charismatic leader, and that is secrecy or exclusivity. They met in underground temples. Its members had secret handshakes. I mean, we're talking about way back, way back, okay? They had cloistered feasts. They had ordeal pits, which were found by archaeologists, and they were used for beating people or burning people or freezing people that went against the cult. So, that's pretty serious. And other than that, we don't really know much about them. But I would be really interested in seeing if I could dig up anything. But if archaeologists can't, then who am I to think I could? But anyway, I was thinking, y'all, that if Facebook was alive and well during this period, we would know everything about this cult, because it would be all over Facebook. Anyway, but Christians, fearing persecutions, also held masses in private homes for centuries. So underground, private homes, it's been done. Their books and practices were varied, like the various pockets of or groups. So basically, it's just like today, where the Methodists think we're kind of, the Christians are kind of all basically believe the same things, but there's things that's different. Marissa Martin, good to see you. I don't remember your name, but it is very good to see you. Hope you come back. Anyway, in fact, it was interesting that Paul's letters were specifically designed to bring all the Christians to one set of practices. So instead of, in the beginning, it was more divided than it is now. I mean, now, like each of these, like the Methodists, the, Church of Christ, the Baptists, they have little nuances that are different. Some of them are bigger, but for the majority, we believe that Jesus is Jesus and God is God, and all that. But back then, it was more varied than it is now. And until Paul wrote his letters that brought us all kind of more together, can you imagine? It had to have been like, and you didn't have cars and stuff, where you could go from one church to another, you could like church hop and find the one that you agreed the most with. And Marissa says, "Hi, Susie. Not sure if I ever watched the channel before, but find the topic interesting." Thank you. I'm kind of off my game today a little bit. I've been kind of sick. So, anyway, but thank you very much. And please come back. We talk mostly about Scientology, but we also pop in about other cults and some true crime here and there and just whatever. We just talk. We're just a really, 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 really. The title grabbed me. Good. I'm glad. That's nice to know. Thank you. Islam and Judaism were also exclusive groups. So it wasn't just the Christians that were all exclusive and hiding out in people's houses. They were, but these groups were defiant in their practices, and they were defiant in rejecting the practices that were existing and in making their own. They weren't like hiding away so much. They were more out there. Muhammad was a reincarnator, I don't know, who rejected both Abrahamic faiths and Arab polytheism. So, and he was right out, in the open too. They were right out in the open. There were several. I mean, the Christians were the ones that were more hiding. The other religions were kind of out there fighting the fight before we were. We were kind of late to the party, y'all. However, here we go again, right? However, historians claim, with the exception of Scientology, they said it, not me, which they say is on the cult religion border, which I personally see absolutely no religion and 100% cult in Scientology. But they report that it's not accurate to describe today's true religions as secretive or cloistering. Sorry. And that's true. You can walk into any church, and a lot of times the doors are open because there's the pastor's in there, preparing for his sermon or doing counseling or whatever. The church secretary, like I was a church secretary, the doors were always open Monday through Friday from like 9 till 5, 10 till 5, something like that. And you can come in, you can ask questions about the church, you can ask anything you want to ask, you can ask questions about the religion, and somebody, if not, like I wouldn't dare have answered questions because I don't want to get anything wrong, but I would have absolutely pointed them to the pastor, to a deacon, to anybody who was more knowledgeable and just than me, because I felt like my whole life I felt like I was a baby Christian. Like I felt like I was new at it my whole life. And I mean, I got more and more comfortable with it, but then I also got very uncomfortable with it. And I still consider myself a Christian. You all that are here every day know that. But I'm kind of not really. I'm good with God. Okay. It's churches that I have a problem with. And it's just because, like I said in the beginning, churches are ran by humans. Pastors, youth directors, all those deacons, all those people are human, and they can make huge mistakes and do incredibly wrong things. No, it's not weird that you enjoy it, and as an atheist, not at all. I think that it makes more sense, actually. I mean, I don't think that it's odd at all, Marissa. I really don't. And thank you, Marilee. Yes, I do my homework. I usually am a little more pulled together. Today, I just seem like I'm just in a weird mood, y'all. Anyway, historically, Christianity was forced behind closed doors due to an occasional bout with Roman persecution, which we all know that. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm a Christian, but how often do we hear Christians talk about how they're being persecuted? And 9 times out of 10, they aren't. Happy holidays does not mean we're ignoring Christmas. Does not mean that we're taking Christ out of Christmas. Xmas doesn't even mean that. It's an abbreviation, you know? Nobody's telling you you can't be your religion. Nobody's telling you that you can't go to church. Nobody's telling you that you can't pray. You can even pray in school. You just can't force somebody to pray in school. There's the difference. But they all want to go, oh, prayer in school, prayer in school, prayer in school. We're being persecuted as Christians. No, you're not. You're not being persecuted. You want to hear persecution? Read your Bible and go back to the Roman times whenever they were being persecuted. There's a humongous difference, and you got a little phrase that you want to use, and it's bullshit. I'm sorry, but it's bullshit. And I would say that to my pastor if I had one. I would say that to my ex-pastor, which I do have, and I'm still friends with. So, but religion, Christianity is not persecution is not the case today. And it's interesting to me that Islam and Buddhism proudly and sometimes even forcibly sought converts, and they never hid, even in the worst of times. And a lot were killed for it, but isn't it odd that they never hid? They were out there working on it. And I mean, I don't know anything about either one of the religions, so I'm not, for or against. I'm just saying this is the facts. Mischief Man is just watching me. She knows it's like 41 minutes. She sent me big old eyes. For those of you that don't know, like Marissa, Mischief Managed is my what I call a super mod. She's usually in the chat, keeping track for trolls. She's usually I have cancer and I am a chemo patient and I get exhausted. I have breast cancer. Third time. So she's like she has like a clock and she is watching that thing even when she's supposed to be in bed. She's watching it. Maybe she is in bed and she's just watching it. But anyway, she's watching that clock and she's still bossing me even though she's not here. So anyway, that's who she is. And that's what that's about. So anyway, today's religions do sometimes maintain secrecy even now, which is weird. The Vatican contains a Dan Brownian library of mysteries, and Daoism embraces enigmatic riddles called the Koan. But organized religion is primarily very open. They'll tell you anything. There's not any secrets. You don't have to, go up all these levels like in Scientology and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to find out that Xenu exists and is an alien, or, in their words, and all of that, which we go into quite often. It's mainstream and their beliefs and practices are everywhere. So yeah, the Baptists, the Catholics, all that, you can get their information everywhere. You don't have to like beg for it or pay for it. But it's far more likely that your neighbor is a Christian or is religious versus being a cult member. Unless you live in Clearwater, Florida, and then your neighbor is very likely a Scientologist and in the midst of a cult. So, another thing that this is the most important one of all, that all cults have that religion doesn't necessarily have. Necessarily, okay? And that is toxic relationships and behaviors. The reason we see cults as bad is because they are literally toxic. They often involve, I can't say the word. I can't think of what I use. I can't pronounce it. Misogynistic beliefs and practices, dangerous intention and practices, harmful psychological tricks, disconnection from family or the outside world, and more. Okay? Your general religion that's mainstream is not going to do any of those things. And then there's also rapture cults that have been known to encourage self-unaliving and torture. Wow. But wait. And we're getting close to the end, Mischief, so don't be freaking out. It's also easy to point out a lot of toxic behaviors that legitimate religions have or had at one point or another practice. I mean, seriously, the Old Testament of the Bible, Lord have mercy, it's pretty toxic. And I mean, wow, it's really hard to bring somebody to Christianity if their first introduction to Christianity is the Old Testament. I mean, I literally told Reese because she was like, I'm going to start at the Bible at the first and try to read it all and everything. And I said, you might want to just skip to the New Testament because the Old Testament is a little much for a newbie. So I don't know. You know, there are Christian Puritans who whip themselves. So that's pretty toxic, right? There's Jains, Jains, who starve themselves to death and participate in female genital mutilation. And let's face it, there's really nothing more toxic than the sexual and physical abuse many children experience in mainstream churches. We've all heard about the Catholic stuff. We've all heard about Baptist stuff. We've heard some pretty horrible stories. There are two ways that we can resolve this, according to historians. Either we say cults are not defined by toxic behavior, or we say religions have cultish elements, elements that ought to be purged. So basically, what that's saying is that we can't call a cult just because it has toxic behaviors, because churches do too. And so every religion would then be classified as a cult if that was the only thing that we used. But luckily, we have the whole charismatic leaders and secrecy to go along with it. But that opens up a can of worms. Your local church literally doesn't gather around an ordeal pit, right? But all major religions do encourage a bit of ordeal, right? I mean, if you think about it, there's many religions, many religions, my nose, that encourage fasting. I'm not going to be fasting. I fast overnight when I'm asleep. That's enough. Or a pilgrimage, or even servitude. Those are all things, they go on missions, they go and do things of service for different people. And so all of those can be considered ordeals because a lot of times they're not comfortable, you're not in the best locations, you're not in the best, where you're staying isn't really all that good. Sometimes you're going to have to go down with the homeless people and, it's or a prison, and so it is a form of ordeal, right? It becomes a question of degree. How toxic are they? How toxic are those ordeals? How toxic are those churches or religions? Cults involve initiation rules that scar and practices that maim physically, but also mentally. I have a cat here. I'm sorry. They basically demand it all psychological dependency. Think about Scientology and how they demand that. They separate you from your family. They, lock you up in a prison. They lock you up in those stupid dorms. I mean, it is all about psychological dependency. Your brain is so dependent on that organization that you can't do anything else. So, it's absolutely cults brainwash and manipulate. We know that with Scientology, but it happens with all of them. Think about Manson. Think about, you know, the People's Temple. I couldn't think of the name of it. There are not, or these are not practices of mainstream religion. We don't do those things. We don't brainwash. I mean, not really. We have to, we do drill a lot of stuff into people's heads that I guess could be considered that, but it's not technically brainwashing. So, and we try not to manipulate. But we are human, and so some people might. And religions might have cult-like characteristic, but toxicity is the main difference. If a church becomes toxic, then you need to look and see, does it have a charismatic leader? Are there secrets? Because you might be in a cult or somebody trying to start one. Basically, cults are religions that we don't like, but they're not all religions. And the few that we don't like based on religion, we have pretty good reasons for it, right? So back to the beginning, how would you feel if your neighbor was a cult member? And how would you feel if your child or family member or friend said that they joined a group of like-minded people? Would that bother you? Would you be scared? Would you try to talk them out? Talk them out of it. What would you do? Would you ignore it? Would you think it's not my business? I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with any of the things that I listed. I mean, sometimes it's not our business. Sometimes it's not safe for us to interfere. But what would you do? Like, honestly, I keep thinking about which my neighbors, every direction except for one, and they are too, actually. Every direction, all four directions are family members. And so I would have that, this is my family, you know. Yeah. Ignore it, no way. I agree, Mischief. I agree. Absolutely. So I'd love to hear, honestly, y'all. You know how I am. I'm big on, I want us to be a community. I want us to talk to each other. I would love to hear from any of you who live near a cult, have cult members who are or were friends or family, or that were in a cult. You know, are there cults that we don't even know about in our own backyards? I was doing some research on cults today and I found several little cults in Oklahoma. I mean, within a 30, 40-mile radius in pretty much any direction. There's not Scientology, but there are other cults. So how long is it going to be before Scientology is here too? We really do kind of have an epidemic going of religions turning into cults, of political movements turning into cults. They have charismatic leaders, and we really need to be more aware and warn our children, because the best time to warn them is before something happens. I know that they'll be like, there's not any cults here, Mom, but there are. I guarantee you, in any state, in this nation, in any country, there are cults, and they're not the ones that are making the headlines. There are these little, maybe 100 people, 60 people, 200 people, whatever, but they're growing. And they're after our kids. They're after us. They're after anybody that they can pull in and make some money or use and abuse. So we just really, really, really need to be more aware and warn our children, and especially y'all, college age children or young adults. They are the biggest target for cults, college age. First of all, they're, learning who they are. They're a lot of times out of the home for the first time in their life, away from mommy and daddy's, thumb on them, telling them everything to do. They T minus 5 minutes. I'm almost done. They really are in danger, and we need to watch them. And if you pay attention, and I know that this is something that a lot of you know, they like to open these orgs right across from college campuses. Look at Austin. There's a lot of states and towns that they have organizations right in front of a college, and they figure out ways to worm in there, and it puts our kids at danger. So that would be what I would think would be the main difference between a religion and a cult. Religions normally don't like go out and, I mean, some do, but they don't go out and try to drag our kids in there, to manipulate the kids and lie to the kids and get the kids in there. And that's what Scientology does. That's what cults do. So I'm going to go back and check with my chat quickly so I don't get in too much trouble. Yeah, it'll be a little bit over an hour, but I promise I'll hurry, mischief. Okay, so I'm just trying to make sure that I haven't missed anyone. Marilee says, Joel, so many people are similar to you. Losses around holidays, but I can't imagine the loss of a child. I can't either. Marilyn says, hope you had a great Thanksgiving for all of us who celebrate. Yeah. Mine was good, other than the ham and the turkey. I won't go on about it again. Marilyn says, I'm listening and I'm sure I'll learn something. I doubt it. We need to have you on here. I should have got a hold of you and had you do this one with me. Joel says, churches and cults do have many things in common. For me, one thing that stands out is money. At their core, they are a business driven by money. It is all a sales job ending in money. Follow the money. Absolutely. Like the Baptist church that I was in, we passed that plate. Now, the difference is, and I don't know if it's a difference, but in my experience, the plate, it was what we would collect on Sundays wasn't enough to sustain the church. Where we sustained the church was a lot of it was people that died and left large amounts of money, or people that once a year would give a large amount of money or something. But it was really strange because, honest to God, I swear, I'm not going to name names because some of y'all might know them, but some of the more rich people in the church, and it's not all, some, literally a couple of the wealthy, I'm not talking, middle class, I'm talking wealthy. A lot of the wealthy people in the church that I was the secretary of gave less than the poorer people. And that was always so bizarre to me. And it was one of the things that kind of drove me away from the church, because they sit in that pew and they talk a good talk and they want to have control over what we build and how we, what, I can't remember the word for it. My mind is not working. What, kindergarten. Sunday school has their, the things that we study, and there's several different ones that you can buy, and they wanted to have control over which one we bought and how we taught and how I decorated my classroom and who I, had pray and not pray and how, all this stuff. If I had snacks or didn't have snacks. And I mean, they wanted to have control of that. And yet they gave less money than some of the people that were probably having, they were living payday to payday. And it just broke me. I thought, churches are people. And that's what drove me out, was I'm not there to worship people. I'm there to worship God and Jesus, and I can do that at home. Marissa says, I think about this topic often. Surely there are many cults pretending to be religious, preying on sweet people everywhere. Absolutely. Absolutely. Come stay here and visit with us. We will talk about them, I promise. Whoops. Susie says the illusionary truth effect, sorry, I can't see today, states that simply by hearing a statement repeated multiple times, people are more likely to perceive it as true, even if it's false. True. Absolutely. Absolutely. I am just so glad that Marissa's here. I hope she comes back. Aw, her cousin just lost the battle. She was 40. I've been fighting it 13 years. And I just keep struggling. But I tell you, when the reason that Mischief Managed tries to get me off of here is that she knows that by the time I end my live, to walk the 60, 70 feet to my bedroom to lay down for 30 minutes before I fix dinner, I'm like going, as long as I sit here, I'm okay. But I do have a new office chair that's going to help with my back, but I haven't got my office set up. I've been lazy, so I'm going to get that done, I promise. And then maybe I'll be able to do more. Marissa says, I'm pretty sure that the church in my hometown is a cult. Redding, California. My grandparents used to live in Redding, California. I loved it there. I'll have to look into that. Bethel in Redding, California. The weirdest thing I heard about them was kind of like touch assist for a young child's broken arm. Yeah. Yeah, that's, I will be myself, and even my pastor has said you should start with the New Testament. Yeah, I believe that. I believe if you're new, honestly, that the New Testament is much more palatable. It kind of gets you started. There's some, things in there, but it gets you to a place that you're not put off as much by the Old Testament. The Old Testament, I love some of the stories in it. I absolutely love it. Don't get me wrong. But there's a lot. It's hard. Hey, Carrie Ann, good to see you. Oh, I hope you had a lovely Thanksgiving too, and you are always beautiful, girl. I'm just jealous of that hair. Yeah, passing the plate is voluntary. You're not forced to do it. You don't have to. Oh, now, Marissa, cozy channels like this are dangerous for me because I really do talk too much. Now, we all talk too much in here. And we have the community page that you can comment on there. You can go after the show. If you have like a large comment that you want to make, go after the live is over to the comment section and just, it'll let you like write for, you can write a novel. And I read every single comment that I get. Also, you can email me or message me on Facebook. Oh, y'all are making me feel so welcome. I hope so. I really do. So anyway, that's the end of my stream. So I'm only 3 minutes over, and I'm going to go, and I'm not going to say goodbye 500 times like Mischief says I do. I'm just going to say it once. So goodbye. I plan to be here tomorrow, same time, same place. Come back and see me. And Marissa, I hope you are with us.